So good morning, this is the licensing hearing for Thursday, 26th of June. The first item of business is to elect a chair, and I understand that the committee have elected Councillor Cuthbertson. Are we all in agreement? Over to you then, Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start the meeting now. And this is a matter of an application in respect of the Marcia Gray in Front Street, Acomb. And it's been made by Punch Pubs Limited. And it's a variation to the existing application to include an additional room at the rear of the pub. Okay, I'm going to introduce my colleagues. On my right is Councillor Hook, and on my left is Councillor Nichols. And the officers here with us today are Helen Sefton, who's our licensing officer, and Jane Meller and Ben Jewett from Democratic Services, and our legal advisors. Sandra Brannigan is our formal legal advisor, and a trainee legal advisor today is Lucy Waller. Welcome, Lucy. Okay. Do you need to say anything about yourselves?
My name is Piers Warren from TLT Solicitors. Oh,
sorry.
Sorry. My name is Piers Warren from TLT Solicitors, and I represent the applicant Punch. And Graham Robinson is with me. He's a consultant on the scheme for Punch Taverns. I do have a few apologies. We'd usually have an area manager here, but he couldn't make it today. So he's given a formal apology, and the DPS as well is rather busy, as one can imagine.
Okay.
So they wanted me to pass on their apologies.
Good. Okay. Thank you for that. In which case, I'll ask members of the panel for declarations of interest. Are there any interests from you to declare? No. Councillor Hook or Councillor Nichols? None. And I haven't any myself. In fact, the first time I've really noticed the pub was when I visited the site yesterday with Councillor Hook. So no declarations of interest. Now, when it comes to deliberating on the decision before us, we will need to exclude the press and public. So I'd like to put to the panel a motion that the press and public be excluded from the hearing during our deliberations and decision-making at the end of the hearing for the reasons which are set out in agenda item 5. Are we content with that?
Yep.
Right, yeah. Thank you. So that's so decided. I have the minutes of a licensing hearing held on the 6th of May to consider, at which Councillors Hook and Nichols were present. Yeah. Yeah. So, can I ask if you're happy to approve these minutes?
Yep.
Yes, great, okay. In which case, the minutes are approved. That's the minutes of the 6th of May meeting. So we now move to determining the application by Punch Taverns Limited for a variation of the premises licence in respect of the Marcia Gray. Have you got a copy of the procedure, can I ask?
I have seen it, yes. Thanks very much. Yes.
Okay, great. So the procedure in summary is that the licensing officer will present their report, and there's then an opportunity for the applicant and members to ask the licensing officer questions about the report, and it then follows with the applicant presenting his application and so on. So, in that case, licensing officer, would you present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, good morning, everybody. So, as stated, this is an application for the variation of a premises licence made by Punch Taverns Limited. The Marcia Gray has held a premises licence first issued by the licensing authority at the City of York Council since August 2005. The variation arises from the redevelopment of a rear storage area / kitchen into a new pool darts room, thereby increasing the licensable area. The variation seeks to change the plans attached to the original licence to encompass the new facilities. The applicant has stated there will be no change to the hours, operation or licensable activities offered. A copy of the application and plans of the new development is found in Annex 1, which is 31 to page 52 of the pack, and I have printed some extra plans. There's the new development, the existing plans from 2005, and then an additional plan provided by the applicant. A copy of the current premises licence and the current plan are found at Annex 2 of the pack. That starts at page 53. An overview of the circumstances in which entertainment activities are not licensable can be found as Annex 3. So the premises is not located within the cumulative impact area, and I can confirm that the consultation process for the application was carried out correctly. There have been no representations from any of the responsible authorities. There have been 3 representations from other persons. 2 of those representors objected to the grant of this variation, stating that the objective of the prevention of public nuisance could be compromised if the variation is granted. 1 of the representors wrote in support of the variation, and the representations are found at Annex 5. So a map showing the general area around the premises is at Annex 6. The applicant's solicitor has submitted some additional information from the hearing, and this was previously circulated by the Democracy Officer as a supplement, and that's at page 85. And further to that, 2 of the representors have also submitted some additional material, and that's been circulated to all parties prior to the hearing. So today the committee has the following options when you make your decision. Option 1 is to modify the conditions of the licence, and option 2 is to reject the whole or part of the application, and for this purpose the conditions of the licence are modified if any of them is altered or omitted or any new condition is added. So that chairs my report, and obviously happy for any questions.
Thank you, Helen. And I don't know if any members have got any questions in relation to that report. No?
Just one.
Okay.
Since the licence was given up to date, has there been any concerns raised with you about any activity yet?
So concerns is abroad.
Yeah.
I did look in preparation for today to just see if there were any overall complaints recently.
Yeah.
I think to go back to 2005 would be a little unfair. There were 3 complaints in the last 12 months. 2 were dealt with by my colleagues in the Environmental Protection team. So, and they were regarding the outside speakers that were in use, which is mentioned by some of the representatives. But those complaints have both been closed off and dealt with. There was a 3rd complaint, which was an anonymous letter that was sent to the licensing team. But because it was anonymous, we can't follow it up, we can't corroborate it. So, to be honest, it was disregarded.
Cool.
And that's everything.
Okay. I know that one of the representatives has made not really a representation, but a comment about the deliveries to the pub through the roller shutter, which is marked at A on the plan, and has commented that there are difficulties with access through Bowling Lane, which is at the side of the pub, on account of its narrowness. I realise that's not a matter for this application directly, but you may wish to consider that in terms of the future operation of deliveries at the pub, since it will presumably take place outside in Bowling Lane in future.
Shall I just address that very quickly? The reality is that area that he was talking about hasn't been used for 18 months prior to Punch taking on the premises, so in fact it isn't a viable cellar. So it's back to the old ways, and obviously the drays have to park up front, and you'll have seen he references buses as well, and I suspect that roadway is a little narrow and perhaps not particularly well designed through no one's fault. Now, of course, if anyone was being blocked and an emergency needed to get out, the draymen are there moving barrels and would happily help and facilitate if they can. But I think it is right to recognise it's not necessarily something for us here. But you'll have seen that Sonia, who's the DPS, does engage with residents. So one would expect if there were any issues that would be dealt with.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warren. Okay.
Chair, you may be moving on to this, but the applicant may have questions for the licensing officer.
You may indeed.
No questions. Thank you, and a very comprehensive report. Thank you.
Do you now wish to talk about the application?
Thank you, Chair. I note from the pack I have 15 minutes. I do not intend to use all of my 15 minutes today. If I get anywhere close, I'll be surprised, but do let me know if I'm getting anywhere close. The report obviously starts at paragraph 5, at page 25. You'll note it's simply a change of layout to the plans. We're not looking to amend any of the licensable activities or change any hours. This, as you'll have seen from our letter, is part of an investment, substantial investment into the pub since Punch bought it last year of £120,000, which in this day and age in the pub industry, you'll know, which is under quite a lot of tension, is quite a significant investment to make and much needed. No offence to whoever was there before, but obviously by the end they were ready to go, I think is a fair way of putting it, and it needs a bit of work and some uplift, and you've seen the pub, I think, from your visits. It's significant, I think, and in particular in relation to your comment, the question that was asked by Councillor Nichols about any concerns or complaints. There are no representations from your responsible authorities, including Environmental Protection, who investigated these two issues of the speakers outside, and I only mention that partly because obviously I'll come back to the importance of the responsible authorities in my summing up at the end, but actually more so in relation to the fact that has been investigated, they were closed, so one can't infer any undermining of the licensing objectives from those issues. And in fact, the speakers are not part of today. They've been there for some time previously. There are 3 representations, 2 against, 1 supporting. I've read the additional material provided. Candidly, it doesn't really expand upon what the original complaints are, so I'll deal with those as and when they come up. But I think it is very important we separate what is and is not relevant to this application. As you've already said, dray deliveries aren't part of the licensing objectives. And we have similar issues when it comes actually to the nature of how much we can do about a partition wall, in fact, with another premises. So I'm sure your legal advisor will advise you to the difference between public and private nuisance, but the Licensing Act is very specific about us dealing with prevention of public nuisance issues, not private nuisances. And that is obviously something that I will come back to. You've seen that we sent the email sent to the residents on the 10th of June. It's pages 87 to 90 of your pack. And the plan we referred to is at page 91, which just marked on it the areas where we're doing the additional works, where the new window is, where we're moving the band from. Now, not all of that is relevant to the representations, but Punch are very, very keen, as is the DPS, to engage with residents and make sure that we give them as much information and as much updates as we can. So I won't take you through everything, obviously, in the letter that we sent, but to draw out the main points in relation to the adjoining house. As I say, public nuisance is the licensing objective. The concerns that were raised in relation to internal noise and transmission would, if there were a level of transmission through buildings that amounted to a nuisance in any way at all, would likely be a private nuisance and dealt with under the noise abatement statutes, the Environmental Protection Statute, by way of noise abatement notice. Now, there's no evidence to suggest this would happen, and actually the activities that will go on there with the additional insulation and we don't anticipate would cause issues. The reason for building this room and doing this is actually to try and generate trade in those midweek kind of fallow periods where you don't get much trade nowadays. So by having a pool team and a darts team and trying to encourage that social and communal element, we're hoping to actually make the pub viable across the week rather than relying on weekend trade, which is, as we know, always a bit dangerous thing to do in this game, as they say. So the internal soundproofing works. If you had any questions about that, Graham would obviously be able to help you. But that is, that is pretty standard. It's fairly robust. It's about how you fit it, not about the depths of these things. Is the honest answer. Deliveries, I think we've dealt with that. I don't think I need to touch on that again. The use of the garden, again, we're not making any changes to the garden per se, so the garden has always been used as is. You've heard that there were some concerns raised about speakers in the garden. I will address the fact that we've actually looked at that ourselves, and we've made a proactive proposal there, but actually there are no complaints that we're aware of in relation to the use of the garden generally beyond what one might consider the hubbub of people being in a pub garden, and candidly that's something one would expect. There's certainly nothing that suggests it goes above and beyond that here. The other concerns that are raised are more kind of in passing. It would be the way I'd describe them, as not to belittle anything that's said by residents, but very much one resident was saying, we need some security on the wall issue. The other one was saying, I don't like being blocked in during deliveries, and both of them at the end sort of say, oh, and by the way, we sometimes have some noise from music, etc. Well, we're not changing music here, and we're not doing anything to actually add any activities to the licence. But as good neighbours, you'll see that Sophie Saville, who's the DPS, is very proactive. She's engaged with local residents. The follow-up letters reference that, which is very nice to see, and it's always encouraging when residents, even if they do raise concerns, are actually quite balanced in the way they do so. And you'll see that we have offered as the applicants conditions on the second side of our email. So the first one is to do with the speakers issue, only to be used for background music and to be turned off at 9 p.m. during the week, 10 p.m. at weekends. Now, again, you can, obviously, your legal advisor can advise you on the nature of background music, which is in of itself not a licensable activity, but very much it's there so that we can give some, try and ease the concerns of the residents. A dispersal policy. It was raised again, not necessarily relevant to this application, but people moving out from a pub at the end of the night can cause a bit of disturbance. So a dispersal policy is good practice. It's something that the officers can hold us accountable to in terms of the work we do to try and clear people quickly and quietly. And a complaints book. And I know one of the residents says, well, why should we have to complain? But that's the way these things work. It is, we want to be proactive, but you can't necessarily understand what people are going through unless they tell you. So a complaints book means that we have to keep a record of what's said, what's done about it, and the officers can come and check that we're doing what we say. So we think that is, if you like, a very proactive but also proportionate response that goes, I would suggest, a bit above and beyond the application, but actually shows Punch's intentions and Sophie's intentions here. So that really is all I have to say about the application. Under 15 minutes, great. I'm slightly proud of myself on that, honestly. Usually go on way too long. So if you have any questions, I understand you do about layout. Delighted to assist.
Okay. Thank you for putting your case in those terms. Can I ask if there are any questions for the applicant? Councillor Nicholas?
Yeah, just for clarification, Singer D, I've got two maps and I've got a D in an alleyway in one and D in a corner in another one. So I've got, on that one there's a D down there, but on that one there's a D there. So
I think, yes, so no, this plan
is the right one.
Is the one we referred to in the email.
Fine.
So that,
yeah.
anything referred to in the email, it's on there.
Right, so the Singer's well away from...
So that's the idea,
yeah.
to move the Singers away from the opposition.
Cool. And the extension, well, it's not extension, just change the use. How much will that increase the footage for customers then? How much more? Because obviously it's gone from a kitchen to pool room.
It's a relatively small room.
Can you use your microphone, please?
My apologies. My apologies.
Redo it.
You're looking at about 24 square metres.
Right, cool.
Sorry, it's a fairly small extension taken into the size of the pub,
and
with
then
that specific use.
The bit where you get from the main room through to the pool room, is that just going to be like a passageway? That's not going to be used for anything?
Yes.
Just a passage?
Yes, that's right. Correct.
And so, I presume at the minute, because you've got a kitchen, you do food, and you're going to stop doing food then?
No, it's never done.
Never done food?
Yes, so it was just a kitchen that never got used, so it became a storeroom effectively.
Right.
So it was decided best to remove it and use the space proactively.
The previous people who ran the pub, they didn't use it as a kitchen either, so
Right.
it's never been used.
And CCTV, is that good in the pool room as well?
Yes, full coverage in there.
Cool. But it's a long way from anybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. You've mentioned about reducing the time when the speakers are on outside, so that means that wouldn't fall into the licensing category. But am I right in thinking you're still going to be doing the karaoke and things after, whenever the licensing kicks in?
So I don't think, in terms of the speakers, that the condition we've offered is for the external speakers only, and only to have background outside. Now, inside, for various reasons, you can have, obviously, live and recorded music under the Live Music Act until 11 o'clock at night, and whatever's allowed by the licence as well on top of that. The idea is those activities would stay as is, but my understanding is certainly there's been no complaints made or any verified complaints about the levels of music. Now, the first we heard about someone hearing the singer through the wall was as part of this letter. So as a proactive measure, we've moved that across. And that will just be kept under advisement. And of course, if there is a problem there are powers outside of licensing for officers to come along and serve noise abatement notices or, other measures. So we're quite happy that actually the activities should be contained properly. If anything, with the extra insulation down the other side and moving these speakers, we think that should cure the majority of any concerns that have been raised.
Thank you, Councillor Hook. So that's our questions for the applicant. And the next item, since there are no representatives here, is for you to sum up if you need to.
Thank you, and I won't even take all of the 5 minutes I'm allocated for that. This is something of a new thing for me. Just to remind you of some of the guidance, and for your legal advisor as well, paragraphs 2.1 and 9.12 of the current statutory guidance under section 182 of the Licensing Act makes the point in general terms that your police and responsible authorities are your experts in these matters, and therefore I'm going to submit that you should take the fact that they haven't raised any concerns here as being significant when you come to your deliberations. I don't want to diminish the concerns of residents because obviously that's something that they have, but a lot of it does sit outside of this process and this application. So just to remind you of that, such as use of the garden, the deliveries, and I would say that there is no evidence. As you know from section paragraph 9.43 of the guidance, your determination has to be based on evidence, and there is no evidence before you have issues. In fact, the fact that there were some closed-off concerns would suggest the opposite, in fact, of a well-run pub, and the residents reference that. And I hope you are given some comfort that they reference proactive support and the conditions we've offered. So that's really all I have to say, is I think, given the circumstances, I'm going to be asking you to approve this application as applied for with the 3 additional conditions we offered in our email on the 6th of June. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Do we have any final points of clarification? Councillor Hull.
I might have done it in the wrong place, but you said there were going to be CCTV in the new room. Would that be a condition?
The police had every right to ask for it as a condition. There is guidance from the Information Commissioner's Office, excuse me, it's been a long journey up, that says that it shouldn't be ubiquitous to insist on CCTV in places where there is no need to do so. So, for instance, where there is no issues of crime and disorder or anything like that, it should be for the operators to put in the CCTV, if they so wish, as they have set their own safety, and then set the terms by which they operate it. If you set a condition, for instance, that required a set number of days, that might actually be disproportionate to the system that's gone in and cause all kinds of expense. So, yes, there is CCTV there. If there were any issues in the future, then obviously that's something that could be revisited with the police and could be tailored to the issues that are relevant.
Just from your position, that there is CCTV definitely going in those rooms. We've already budgeted for that. On your comment, it is slightly away from the bar. So as a matter of course, with all punches, for their own protection and it as a 30-day timer insisted on by police. So that is going in as a matter of course.
No, thank you, Chair.
In which case we'll withdraw to deliberate, and I can't anticipate it will be very long. So if you want to wait, there should be some receipts in the reception area.
Do you need me to take my bag? I promise there's nothing in there.
It's fine to leave them here.
As long as it's not ticky.
There's nothing ticking and there's nothing...
Okay, fine. Thank you. Good. Okay. Okay. I'm able now to notify you of our decision, and you'll be pleased to hear that it is to modify the conditions of the licence as one of the options on page 27, number 25, and to modify the conditions on the lines that you've proposed. When that's recorded, the licensing authority will write to you formally as soon as possible to notify you of that change of conditions.
And the grant of the plan change, sorry.
And the grant of, yes, okay. Yeah, so that should accompany.
Thank you very much. Worth checking.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much.
Good, in which case, thank you very much for attending,
Pleasure.
and I hope things will go well. Thank you, officers.
Thank you very much.